what do you know? Welcome everybody to another edition of the Balkin podcast. As I was saying, we got a couple of episodes for you coming up as the season's just about beginning this week. And on today's episode, we're going over the 10 players that I think are going to break out this MLB season. Now, what do I define as a breakout? Well, number one, we had to have seen him play last year at the major league level, whether it be for a week, a month, a year. It could be a guy that's in their third year or whatever. It doesn't matter. We had to have seen him last year play in some capacity. I'm not going to go with rookies. I feel like that's an easy cop out. You could go with most of my, top 10 of my top prospects. I mean, now with Jordan Walker and Anthony Volpe up, it's easy to say, okay, we're going to pick them. We're going to quickly eliminate those guys. So they had to have played in the majors at some point last year. And I'm really excited about this list. I feel fairly confident in most of them, especially the top guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to comment below on which guys you think are going to break out this year. And after this episode, we're going to be going over, my MLB predictions for the season. So hope you guys enjoy. Here we go, my top 10 breakout stars of the MLB season this year. At number 10, we have George Kirby of the Seattle Mariners. Now, a lot of people are going to pick Logan Gilbert, who was just as good as Kirby last year, maybe if not better than Kirby. But here's the thing. I looked at his baseball savant stats, and you know what? There's a lot of room for concern with a guy like Gilbert. I don't think it is very favorable in the long term for Gilbert. I think he can turn it around. But however, when you look at George Kirby and what he was able to do with his abilities coming out of the minors, I think Kirby ends up being the bigger breakout guy this year. He was my personal favorite out of the two in their system because he had better control and better pure stuff, especially with his slider that definitely looked as good as advertised, ranking at near the top of some of the best movement in the league. So Kirby has one of the best sliders already in baseball. In 25 starts last year, Kirby went respectable 8-5 with a 3.39 ERA. Add to that, his walk percentage was in the top tier of the league as a rookie. That's something I value personally very high. And you add to that, he throws mid, maybe even high 90s with that slider. I mean, this guy is a guy that I think is going to take the next step this year. I think he makes his all-star debut in 2023 and quietly becomes the Mariners ace with Luis Castillo as the Mariners attempt to take down the Astros in the AL West. At number 9, we got Will Brennan of the Cleveland Guardians. I want to make a note that this was originally going to be Gabriel Arias until his hand injury. I mean, Gabriel Arias, you can make a case both should be on this list, and originally they both were on here. I think Arias could eventually be an infielder of the future for the Guardians. But, however, his teammate Will Brennan, my guy, he destroyed all of minor league pitching in 2022. And in only 42 ABs in the bigs, basically 2 weeks in the bigs, he truly showed he could handle his own and even hit well in the playoffs against the Yankees. It's another high contact lefty that the Guardians have, like a Steven Kwan. I think Brennan has more pop than Kwan, and I think will challenge Oscar Gonzalez and Miles Straw for ABs as soon as the first game of the year. I know Tito Francona likes to play with platoon groups, and maybe he'll do that with, Straw or Gonzalez with Brennan. But I think he's the fourth capable bat they have in the outfield. But I think he ends up taking over either Gonzalez or Miles Straw in the everyday lineup. I mean, this is a guy who just hustles out everything, gives his all. He's a personality you want in your locker room. He's going to fit in beautifully for the full season with the Guardians. I can see him as a guy that if he plays every day, he can hit 15 home runs, steal 30 bases, and be just another bat in what looks to be a very sneaky, talented Guardians lineup this season. But Will Brennan, number 9, as my breakout stars of this season. At number 8, we got Hunter Brown of the Houston Astros. Now, Hunter Brown has had the hype for years, and while it's easy to say you could go with a Christian Javier in the Astros rotation or Framber Valdez, who's my dark horse Cy Young pick, it's really going to be Brown that determines how far the Astros are going to go. Now, he showed outstanding stuff in the majors, limited time though, but he was dominant during the Astros playoff run, showing the ability to strike out batters. However, he didn't really have the control to be consistent, I think. It's something he needs to continue working on, but the pure stuff is there. I do think he takes another step this year as a legitimate piece of the Astros rotation. I don't think his numbers are going to wow you, and you're going to sit here and say, well, is that really a breakout year? I think it's more so the impact he's going to have down the stretch and in the playoff that's going to make people believe he's only scratching the surface and that he's breaking out as a potential front of the rotation guy for the Astros. At number 7, we got Vinny Pasquantino of the Kansas City Royals, their first baseman. Now, while most were curious to see how MJ Melendez did in his debut, it was Pasquantino that stole the show. In 72 games, he posted a 132 OPS, had more walks and strikeouts, and hit 10 home runs and driving in 26. All Pasquantino does is hit the ball hard and will be the Royals' middle-of-the-order presence, not just going into this year, but for years to come. And if MJ Melendez and others can come into their own, the Royals really have something cooking in that lineup going forward. Add to that, you know what? He's a solid defender at first base, and it's clear the Royals have their guy going forward at first base. And one can make the case he's maybe already the best first baseman in the AL Central already. I mean, really the only competition right now is Josh Bell because of his, track record. But Pasquantino, you can make the case he may already be the best. I expect in a full year, he's going to hit 25 to 30 homers, a potential all-star appearance, although I think Bobby Witt may steal that from him. But he's going to be solidified with Bobby Witt Jr. as one of the faces of the franchise in Kansas City. And number 6, we got Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. Now, Joe Ryan had a roller coaster of a season in 2022, but he ended it extremely strong in September, going 3-1 with a 2.20 ERA. I mean, I remember watching him against Cleveland, just being absolutely dominant, hated facing him, just looked very effective down the stretch. Now, his home-away splits show he loves pitching at Target Field and was far sharper in the first half of the season, going 6-3 with a 2.99 ERA. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does in his second full season. But here's another thing that I noticed. He was far more effective against lefties, even though he's a right-handed starter. I mean, he was effective against righties, but he was better against lefties, which is very intriguing to me. The Twins, at the end of the day, need Ryan to take that next step and become the number 2 behind Pablo Lopez. If they have any chance of not just winning the AL Central, but making a legitimate run in October. I've been a critic of the Twins. You have the hitting, but you don't have the pitching in the rotation and in the bullpen. But I fully expect Ryan to make that next step in his second full season to win 15 games, put up a sub 3.20 ERA, eating up 175 innings for the Twins. And you know what? It wouldn't shock me if, he develops the stuff to be a 200 strikeout pitcher. So Joe Ryan, I think, definitely takes the next step next season for the Minnesota Twins. And number 5, we have Patrick Sandoval of the Los Angeles Angels. Now, some will say he broke out last season with the Angels, posting a sub 3 ERA despite going 6-9. But here's the thing. I think he's only scratching the surface of what he's capable of doing. I mean, we saw it at the World Baseball Classic, how dominant Sandoval can be, and being one of the reasons why Mexico made it all the way to the semifinals. But here's the thing. The Angels absolutely need Sandoval to take another step if they have any playoff hopes, and more importantly, any chance to keep Shohei Ohtani. Here's the thing. I think regardless of what happens, I don't think the Angels are really going anywhere. My bold prediction is that Sandoval gets traded along with Ohtani at the trade deadline and breaks out as an ace on a playoff contending team. My wild guess, St. Louis. I mean, him in that rotation would be something else. Now, he hasn't pitched more than 150 innings pitched yet, but I believe he does that this year. And if he gets traded to a contender, I think he looks like a Cy Young candidate for him because, again, in LA, he doesn't get a lot of help. So I think 15 wins is possible for him this year, depending on the situation. I expect 200 Ks and the sub 2.75 ERA from Sandoval this year, making him an even more of a breakout candidate than he was last year. And number 4, we have Nolan Jones of the Colorado Rockies. Now you're probably seeing mostly Guardians tape because that's all we got. I mean, here's the thing. He may be struggling in spring training, but I'm still high in Nolan Jones, the player. He has high exit velocities, big time power, and I think he's just a perfect fit in Coors Field. Now, he's one of those players that the Guardians never had the ABs for and just moved on from him. I mean, you can look at past examples like Gio Urshela, Jesus Aguilar, Yandy Diaz. I think Nolan Jones is going to be next on that list that the Guardians moved on and they just reached their potential elsewhere. I think he's a solid fielder that has a rocket for an arm in right field, and I think he could be the everyday right fielder for the Rockies. Although with his splits against lefties being majorly concerning, I think he ends up this year in more of a platoon situation, but I think he's in the right scenario to be in Colorado where he can get ABs. There are no real, playoff implications, from the start of the season, all due respect to Rockies fans. I mean, they're my number 2 team. They're going nowhere, but it's a good opportunity for him to get ABs, really get comfortable. And I think in Colorado, I think he's the guy that could easily hit 20 to 25, maybe even 30 home runs in Coors Field if he can get the regular ABs. But I think this is a guy that if they can play him every day and give him the ABs, Nolan Jones is going to break out as a big-time power bat in Coors Field. And number 3, we got Riley Green of the Detroit Tigers, and I believe Spencer Torkelson deserves as much discussion here, but Riley Green showed a ton of promise last year in his rookie campaign and looks to be even better coming out of spring training. Add to that, Comerica Park has much shorter fences, and I've done the math. I mean, this is a guy who probably would have hit 5 to 7 more home runs last year. I mean, considering if everything was at Comerica Park, but with the shorter field, this is a guy that definitely is going to hit 20, maybe even 25 homers next year. I mean, he has above average exit velocity, barrel percentage, and chase rate. I think this is a guy that really is going to take that next step and become one of the better outfielders in the game. Probably will start with the AL. I mean, he's got Gold Glove potential. We've known that since he was drafted. He's got top of the order speed. I mean, this is a guy that could easily be a 2020 bat for the Tigers this year, maybe even 30-30, but I don't think he has the power for that. But this is a guy who's going to solidify himself with an all-star appearance this season as one of the cornerstone pieces for the Detroit Tigers and a piece that they can build around going into the future. And number 2, we've got Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, I've seen enough in his 32 games last year and this spring training. Corbin Carroll's breaking out as a top outfielder in the game this year. I mean, he was not my number 1 overall prospect for nothing. I'm that high on him. And the Diamondbacks wisely made their commitment to him, signing him to a long-term extension, and is now clearly the face of the franchise. I think he opens the year as their starting center fielder, plays pretty much every day. I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of Chase Field because I don't think it's a power hitter's park or even a hitter's park in general. So I think I think more so above average power. I think he's got more power than people think. You're never going to see it at Chase Field, but what you are going to see is the lightning fast speed that'll have him on top of the leaderboards in triples this season. I expect him to be a 300 hitter and one of the top base stealers in baseball. And I would even argue, with his defense, a potential Gold Glove candidate going into the year. I think the Diamondbacks expect to make some noise this year. And I think Corbin Carroll is going to be a huge reason why, if they make any noise, he's going to be a centerpiece why. I feel confident saying he is going to make the NL All-Star team this year, but I'm actually going to go on a limb and predict he actually starts for the NL because of the excitement he brings on the field. I think his energy is infectious. The way he runs the base paths, you cannot stop watching him. This is a guy that's going to break out into one of the top players in baseball this year. And that leaves the question, who's number one after that? Well, number one is Oneil Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yes, the great hope of the Pirates. He hits the ball as hard as anyone. He runs as fast as anyone and is one of the best arms at shortstop I've ever seen. Add to that, the Pirates, while not make any big, sexy moves, what they've done is they've added some veteran pieces around him, the Connor Joes, the Carlos Santanas, and others who won't, set the world on fire, but they'll add some protection to that lineup, bringing some legitimate hitters to the plate. And I think that's something that may have been a factor on why he struck out so much, because he had no one hitting behind him. So maybe there was that pressure when you have a guy like Carlos Santana who can, draw walks and knows the zone as well as anyone, possibly in front of you or even behind you. You got to pitch Oneil Cruz a little bit differently. But I do think strikeouts will be his only concern, but he's so talented everywhere else. It won't be a huge issue going forward. Cruz, I believe, puts up an MVP type season, joining the 30-30 club this year. And with other Pirates top prospects arriving soon, I think this is a year where the Pirates see actual hope going into the future. It all comes down to, do those pitchers live up to their hype? I think the real question after this year is, are the Pirates even going to be able to extend Oneil Cruz to a long-term deal? And if not, what do you do? Because that's been a consistent problem for the Pirates. And here's the thing. He's your great hope. Keep him. Keep him around now, because this guy is going to be an absolute stud in the National League for years to come. And it starts this season. All right, there you have it. My top 10 breakout guys in MLB this season. What did you guys think? Who did I leave out? Who are your breakout candidates for this season? Make sure to comment below and make sure you share this everywhere. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. Next time we're going to go over, and it won't be soon after we release this, oh boy, our MLB predictions for this year. I hate what I'm predicting already. I really hate it already. God help us all. Until next time, you guys. We'll talk to you then.